All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Tuesday, February 1st Design and Project Review Committee. We do have a quorum. Is there a motion to suspend the rules to participate electronically?
I'll make a motion that we suspend the rules to meet electronically or by telephone.
Second.
Okay, Katie, please call the roll.
Knighton,
Aye.
Griffith,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Schnur,
Aye.
Kano,
Aye.
Biggs,
Aye.
Tristan,
Aye.
Papa,
Aye.
Eggersberg,
Aye.
Hank,
Aye.
Pratt.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, is there a motion? I'm sorry, we don't have minutes, do we?
We do not. We will have 2 sets next week.
Okay. Great. Okay. First item, new business 1000. Before I start this, if you would like to provide public comment just on any of these items, we'll take public comment as the item goes. So please send me a message in the chat, or when I indicate time for public comment, you can raise your hand. We will take public comment after we've had staff questions, had a chance to ask staff questions. Okay, so new business, 1000 Grove Street, Richard Lehner, LCM Architects, applicant on behalf of, and again, if you haven't muted yourself, please go ahead and mute yourself. Because I am picking up a little bit of feedback here. So Katie, if you could also help and maybe mute people too if they're unmuted. Thanks. New business, 1000 Grove Street, Richard Lehner, applicant on behalf of the McGaw YMCA, requests 2 zoning variations from the Evanston zoning ordinance to allow for the addition of an approximately 431 square foot entry vestibule to the existing recreation and community center with men's residences, commonly known as the McGaw YMCA in the R6 General Residential District. The applicant requests 1 major variation to allow a street side yard setback from Maple Avenue of 0 feet, where a minimum of 15 feet is required. The applicant also requests a minor variation to allow the building lot coverage of approximately 43,331 square feet, or 60.22% of where the maximum permitted is 35,977 square feet, or 50% of the lot area. The subject property is currently improved with 1 5-story building and a surface parking lot. The Land Use Commission is the determining body for this request. Okay, so let's start. The applicant, I saw Monique. Are you Monique? Who's presenting today? Just to give us an overview.
Nicole Woodard. Can I start my video?
Go ahead. Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having us from McGaw. I'd like to just give a brief introduction of our folks and the why, and then I will turn it over to Dick Lehner quickly from LCM Architects. Monique is here. You saw her. She is Monique Parsons, our CEO, and Jody Wickersheimer as well, who is our Chief Development Officer. We just wanted to thank you for the opportunity. We are here as a long-serving nonprofit in the community. We've been here since 1885 and serve in health and wellness programs, fitness and well-being, youth development programs, after school, summer camp, resident camp, as well as our residence program, which is a key part and has been a part of Y programming for over 100 years. We have 156 men living with us and have a traditional of affordable housing in the Evanston community. We currently serve over 5,000 members in Evanston and also have a staff of over 350 that grows in the summer as we offer summer programming to our young people across town. This is a key request for us because it's a once-in-a-lifetime improvement of the residence facility. And so we are really investing in housing men and improving the quality of life. And so that really means improving each residence, which is private and furnished with bed, refrigerator, desk, and storage, as well as improving all of the bathrooms, laundry, kitchen, and program spaces for our men. And so the last thing I want to say before I turn it over to Dick is to really please keep in mind that affordable housing here also means case management and program support, workforce development, substance abuse support and prevention, as well as a commitment to making housing affordable and convenient and a healthy place to be. And so thank you for this few minutes. I'm going to turn it over to Dick, who's going to get into zoning, and we welcome your questions.
Hi, I'm Dick Lehner. I'm a principal with LCM Architects and a 38-year resident of Evanston and member of the Y. Johanna, a question here, which is, I know you've all received a packet. We can review the actual plans on screen if you would like, or we can go through a verbal description depending upon what works best for the committee and what keeps things moving the best.
We typically will share the screen. I think we were waiting for you guys. If you want to, we can open what's in the packet so then everybody can see.
Running through, my plan was to, if it works for the committee, to quickly run through the planned improvements and to show the plans that we're going to that are going to go into place, and then wind up talking about the location of the variance. So it might be easiest if we can go. This is the survey, I think. Am I able to manipulate this at this point?
Chair Knighton, they did send some slides over. I think they wanted
wanna share
to
those?
open those.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Let me.
And then Michael, did you have a question while we're getting that set up? Griffith?
No.
Okay.
Not anymore.
The important key here is that every improvement that is being made at this point is intended to improve the life of the residents. And also that goes to some basic mechanical improvements that will be made. So we're looking to improve the quality of life for the residents as well as to improve the safety of the residents in the long run. Are the slides coming up? Shall I wait for a moment? Okay.
Yeah, my computer is not able to do multiple things at once, apparently. So you can continue to speak a little bit of background, but I'll pull up the slide shortly.
Okay. The men's residence facilities are on the top 3 floors of the YMCA, and it's the building, part of the building that fronts on Grove Street. It's bounded by Grove on the north and Maple on the east, and an alley on the west, and the Y also owns the parking lot to the west of that alley. There are 172 existing SRO rooms, and by SRO we mean that the residents, as Nicole mentioned, are furnished with a bed, chair, desk, and refrigerator, and then the toilets, the showers, and the rest of the facilities are shared. So the plan is to convert those 172 rooms, providing more amenities by we'll reduce that number of rooms to 156. So we're actually reducing the occupancy of the building. The spaces are being given up to provide private showers. Each room will not have a shower, but the rooms will have, not the rooms, but the space will have private shower rooms available. This is wonderful. This is the PowerPoint presentation. If we could scroll down, I'm not sure if I can do that. That would be great. And Nicole,
I still have control of the slide. So which number?
Katie, right here, actually. This is actually the 3rd floor. And you can see that the YMCA is a donut-shaped building. Grove Street is on your right, which is the north. Maple Street is on the bottom, which is the east side. Y at this level is a donut building. And we have SRO rooms around the interior courtyard and also around the perimeter. Each room will be heavily renovated and will be improved, and we'll go into that in some detail in a minute. On the right, you can see statements about exactly what's happening on each floor. This floor will wind up with 40 SRO units and 2 efficiency units. The 2 efficiency units are marked in blue. They're on either corner there at the corner of Grove and Maple and Grove and the alley. The intent of the efficiency units is to provide a place for COVID where people can be isolated. Currently, nobody has a toilet within their room. Nobody has the ability to accept food and say reheat food within their own unit, and they have to go out to use the toilet. So the efficiency units, there are 4 planned, will provide an opportunity to isolate people in case there's a medical need to isolate someone. You can also see in board of that, you can see in the 2 corners that the toilet rooms are being improved, and what are now group showers, that is everybody showers in the same space with multiple heads, will be converted into private spaces. So you'll have a shower and a changing room so that when you're in the shower, you have privacy. On each floor, there will be an accessible shower, and there are accessible stalls in each of the toilet rooms. On the 2nd floor, we'll be adding a laundry space. You can see it marked there. I'm sorry, we just went up to the 4th floor, I think. But on the 3rd floor, there's also a community space, not a community space. It's a shared recreation space. It takes up 2 rooms. We just stepped up to the 4th floor here, and the program is very similar, except that the shared space does not exist on this floor. We also have, I did not mention on the 3rd floor, we're adding a space where in the corner where it says kitchenette, which will have microwaves and also sinks for dishwash. Many of the residents, they don't have the opportunity to cook meals in their rooms, so they're getting meals in. They need a place to wash dishes and they need a place to reheat food. We have redesigned this actually due to COVID to create more space there to allow for more social distancing. And the 5th floor, which is the next floor, is very similar, as you'll see, to the 4th floor, and the improvements are pretty much the same, with the exception that the efficiency units don't occur on the 5th floor. The Y requested 4 of them. We were able to accommodate that on floors 3 and 4, and it seems to make more economic sense to do it there because of the plumbing and other associated infrastructure that has to be put in place for that. Katie, if we could go to the next slide. So this shows you what the both existing and improvements will look like. On the left, you can see an existing shower room, which shows that if you're in showering, somebody else can come in and shower at the same time. It's not very private, it's not very dignified. So to the right of that, you can see an image that's been developed to show a private shower room with a changing room so that everybody will have privacy as they shower. On the right, you can see a before photo of the existing toilet room, and in the distance up those steps, you can see the shower room. So the shower room is not currently accessible. That will be remedied with an accessible unit in the future. And on the bottom, you can see a proposed rendering of the renovated toilet room, which will actually provide more privacy than is there and separation, even though it will still be a place that is shared by the residents. We are hoping to add a little more color to that toilet room as we go. We can go to the next slide, Katie, thanks. This is showing you an existing bedroom on the left, and you can see that it's pretty basic. They are plaster walls and just very basic. What we're hoping to make a distinct difference, and also to greatly increase the amount of storage in each room for use by each resident by using a storage wall, which currently a mock-up is being prepared of that. Among the renovations will be replacement of all the windows in the older part of the building. The existing windows are existing Hope's casement windows, which are a wonderful product, but which should have been replaced 30 years ago. And which are not energy efficient, and also don't provide some safety features that the Y is looking for. I would want to comment here somewhere that it is our intention that any modifications to the exterior of the building will actually follow the Secretary of the Interior standards. for historic preservation, in that we don't want any significant change to the appearance of the Y. We will, for the addition that we'll be talking about in a moment, we will be using similar materials, but we're not trying to make it look like the existing building, which you'll see as we go through. Katie, we could, important statement here that's in the notes, which is we'll be doing some major HVAC work within the building. All of the current units will receive cooling. Currently, the third floor units do not have central air conditioning. They will be provided with cooling, and it will be a replacement system, so it will be all new. So Katie, we can go to the next slide. So getting to the reason for the variance. Part of what happens here is the existing entry for the men's residence is through the front door, which is also where many other individuals come into the building. It's the goal to provide the men a sense of privacy and to improve the sense of dignity as they use the facility, that they will have their own entrance, which will keep them separate from individuals coming in, especially in this case, people coming in for business purposes or for the purposes of community programs who will come in the front entry. This will be the entry for the men's residence. This entry literally has, you can see it on the floor plan on the bottom there, waiting space. It has a wheelchair lift, and it has a stair to take you down to the lower level. And it's a very simple structure, and it's very small. Literally, it is by itself only replacing existing pavement that exists. So in order to reduce the existing impervious surface, other pavement elsewhere on site is being removed to actually improve the current condition from what it is today to what the proposed is. We recognize that the existing Y and the existing impervious surface does not comply with current codes, so we're trying to make it better. And Katie, if we could zoom out now. And you can see a view of the, proposed structure, which is very simple. The bottom will be limestone. To the extent we can do so, it will match the existing, but as anybody who has worked with limestone knows, they rarely exactly match in color. We'll be using glass. We'll be using the same color paint for the mullions as elsewhere, and it will stand slightly off from the building. So it is a modern expression, but it's not trying to look like the existing. It's trying to have its own identity and provide a place where these gentlemen can come into the building and feel a sense of ownership. Katie, could we go to the next slide now? So at the lower level, where you will come in, you can see in the bottom there, you can see the wheelchair lift and the stair coming down from the new entry. We're also going to create some new facilities for the men's residence, which are shown here. The blue shows a new kitchen. It also shows new mailboxes, and it also shows a bike storage area. In addition to that, the meeting room that's shown there in the middle of the slide will be a new facility, and along with offices that are shown to the left for administration of the facility. A key issue here, and a reason why this location is so important for this, is that, and Katie, can you scroll a little to the right? A little more, that's good. If you see in the upper right-hand corner though, you'll see the passenger elevator, and you'll also see a stair across from it. This is the passenger elevator that serves the men's residence. So bringing men in this entry gives them an immediate tie to the passenger elevator that serves the units, and that that creates a private entrance for them. So it is not only private, it is also accessible. We have an accessible lift, and we have the elevator to go up. The stair that you see there actually goes all the way up into the men's residence. So for those who are trying to increase their steps, the men can go upstairs if they want. What isn't shown on this slide is directly to the west of that passenger elevator is also a space that is used for the men's residence. There is a TV room and another meeting area on this floor that was developed a few years ago for the men's residence. And directly to the east is another kitchen facility, which is also shared by the men's residence. So this area is bringing a lot of bang for the buck. The reason the entrance needs to go here is because it is the only direct access to that passenger elevator. If this entry were to go elsewhere on the building, one would not be able to get through the basement area, through the mechanical spaces to get to the vertical transportation to get up to the men's residence. So Katie, we could go to the next slide. So this is here on purpose to show that you can see at the bottom there, and Katie, maybe you can put your cursor on the addition right there. That is the extent of the addition, and that is what the variance is being requested for. We are within the 15-foot street side yard setback for the YMCA building. And we, as I mentioned, we are trying to improve the impervious surface. It's a gesture at least. We looked for other areas of pavement that we could remove and found none that were easily changeable, but at least it's an improvement over the existing condition. With that, I'd be happy to turn it over for questions.
Any staff questions?
Would you like me to stop sharing my screen, Johanna?
You can keep it up.
Okay.
Are there any public works questions before we get started?
Is the drainage from the roof going, it looks like it's toward the building?
At the moment, yeah, it would be taken into the internal drainage system within the Y. So we're not planning to spill it on site.
I know that the buildings already exceed the allowed impervious surface for the site, but you are, with your vestibule, increasing the amount of impervious surface ever so slightly. I'm wondering if you could just consider, particularly there's a lot of concrete area that's in the parkway that's not technically on your site, if there would be a way to maybe offset the small amount of impervious surface you're adding. I don't expect you to get back down to compliance, but.
With all due respect, that the area of the addition is actually currently paved. Any increase is literally in the 10 square foot or so. So we're actually removing more than is going to be added. What's not shown on this plan is the pavement that's being removed. And there is a chunk of it, and we are removing additional surface. If you look to the left on the slide that's up, you'll see a dashed area that's currently paved that's being removed, which should leave us with a net loss of them, not net loss. We should be improving. I'm not quite sure how to phrase this so it's not confusing. We should, at the end of this addition, there will be less impervious surface than there is now. I would also state that we will continue to look for ways to reduce it. And I think that's going to wind up as a long-term goal for the Y. We walked around the building, and we looked at the paving, and we looked at the pedestrian circulation. So for instance, the blue areas on the bottom here, which are walking surfaces, we were wondering if we could take out the connecting walking surface that heads toward the back parking lot. However, it turns out that due to COVID, those are major exits being used by the public and by people coming to the Y every day. And they have been directed to use those exits in order to maintain safety. So we'll certainly continue to look for other places we can reduce it, but there is a net reduction as a result of what we're doing.
So I would just recommend that either you just include it on its own sheet where it's not so busy, or that you have a narrative that explains you're having a net reduction before you get to the Land Use Commission.
Sure.
But that's a great story. And some of those walkways I know probably are also required for fire code reasons for exiting. So that's, you have a limited ability. So thank you very much though.
So
Sorry.
Ingrid touched on one point that I want to touch as far as the canopy and the drainage. Yeah, I was worried of any during snow season, obviously any melting going straight onto the sidewalk. But as you said, it's going to be draining away, and you don't foresee any icicles or anything hanging from that canopy there?
No, actually, in contrast to my house, any icicles that occur should occur on the downside of the slope, right, which is close to the building and away from the sidewalk. So it's one benefit of a sloping roof, I suppose.
And then the other only concern would be future maintenance of that sidewalk. If the building or the entrance goes all the way to the sidewalk, I'm just thinking what it would mean for our maintenance team if we have to do any kind of maintenance in the future, whether removing one of those slabs and pouring it again.
It's a good point. We would, my guess is that the sidewalk's going to be disturbed during construction and it'll probably be repoured, which is something we would have to coordinate on. What we would typically do at that location, especially at the doors, we'd actually dowel the slabs together. So because the door has to be openable, obviously. And that's just to create a level exit so frost heave never causes a problem there. But there's definitely going to be long-term maintenance at some point.
Right, and that's what I'm worried about. I know you would have to disturb it now and pour it new, but again, in 10, 15 years, something happens, what that would mean for the city, especially if it's doweled into your property, or will the repairs be on the Y?
I think that's a subject for discussion. I don't know the answer to that.
So I mean, that sidewalk is not in the worst shape, but it's not in the best shape. Is there, what portions would you replace?
So the truth of it is we haven't gotten to this level of detail. I would anticipate that, you know, we're going to be digging for foundations for all those walls. And if you just look at the cutback for a foundation, I'm guessing that absolutely everything to the east of the planned addition and probably 5 feet to either side of the addition would be coming out and being replaced. Again, we haven't looked at that in detail at this point, but just because of the cutback to form foundation walls, I'm sure you'd be taking that much out.
I mean, so here we are, we're going to look at the detail a little bit to figure out what to do, I think, what to do with the sidewalk. And Laura and Edgar, I don't know, I mean, maybe a requirement should be the replacement of the sidewalk for a certain stretch. I mean, there's a lot of concrete that goes all the way to the street. If there's a different paver pattern you want to see, I know that, I think the YMCA uses that area for loading and unloading. So it makes sense to have it paved, but there's also kind of like a sad little tree in between there too.
Yeah, and my concern isn't so much in the immediate future, but it would be in 15 years, or, you know, when we would have to do any kind of maintenance there in regards to replacing a square there, or, you know, multiple, how we would go about doing that if it is doweled in, if it's abutting straight onto the building, we wouldn't want to damage the building in any way, or that entrance.
And Edgar, we don't have to dowel it in. I would suggest we do it right at the doorway, just because if you get heave there, you can get a step, but we certainly don't have to do it for the rest of the length of the building.
Right, but then again, us just going in there to remove those slabs, since there's no
Sure.
offset, I'm just worried we would cause damage to the windows or other parts of the structure.
Isn't there an offset? I think there is an offset. Or it's not right on the sidewalk, right? You have a couple of feet
It's
between the sidewalk and the door.
just a little bit, yes. If we would have to go to the floor plan again. Is this something where if the Y were to accept the maintenance responsibility for that stretch of sidewalk right there, that would ease everybody's mind?
It would mind a bit, again, just so that we don't cause any damage to the property.
I would recommend to the Y that we take a look at that. I don't speak for the Y, and I'm not sure the Y can make a commitment today, but I would think that there was a likelihood that there could be an agreed upon stretch there, a certain dimension that became the responsibility of the Y. And you can see that there is a a space between the sidewalk and the existing building. We were planning to pave that, but it actually does not, the sidewalk itself, the public sidewalk does not touch the building.
Okay, thank you. I'm seeing that now. Okay, that clears things up.
So why don't we put this as an offline item? Maybe the Y and staff can discuss this a bit further so we can get it resolved before Land Use Commission.
That works for us. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Other public works issues, anything with the trees?
Just the regular tree preservation. And I noticed when it was surveyed that all the trees were tagged.
Yes,
I'd appreciate if those tags were removed after the project's over.
sure.
Are you going to be doing any landscaping, any additional landscaping, or replace the one small tree that's going to come out, or?
We'll be replacing the one small tree that comes out, but the good news is that the landscaping there is very limited. There are two mature trees, one close to the corner, which this whole addition is outside the canopy of the tree. And there's another one that the addition just slightly will impinge on, I think. But I think those two older growth trees are going to survive this from what I've learned over the years, but the small growth tree will go. I don't think a lot of landscaping is planned. It's not that there's going to be a large landscaping program here as a result of this. So it's primarily grass in that area. Certainly the one small tree can be replaced.
Okay. Putting some additional trees in would actually help with the water runoff issue as well.
Noted.
Okay, any other public works issues before we move on to other staff? All right, planner comments. Carlos, you have your hand up. Any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I want to say hello to Dick. He was one of my first commissioners when I started with the city.
Well, Carlos, good to see you.
Good to see you too. I have a couple questions. You mentioned that all the exterior work that may happen on the Y building would be according to the Secretary of Interior's standards for historic preservation. Are you planning on doing any window work in the future?
We are planning to replace the windows in the older portion of the building, Carlos.
And would that be what material?
I don't know exactly right now. To be blunt, it's unlikely it will be steel. It would be nice to replace steel with steel, but as you're aware, the first cost of a replacement window of that nature is significantly higher than something else. We will do our best to work to come as close to the existing mullion and mutton sizes as we can, and we will be showing the divided lights as they are existing. Very sensitive about the appearance of the building. It's definitely a prominent building in the city of Evanston and has been for many years, so we want to maintain the character. So we have not moved forward into detailed material selection at this point, but that would be our intent.
Okay.
The Hope's windows that are there are quite deteriorated. There was a comment on one of the zoning comments that came back from planning about trying to renovate or restore these windows. Even with my sensitivity to preservation, which, as I think you know, is reasonable, I'm very skeptical of that these guys have a lot of hope for that. Plus, there are some safety issues that have been raised over the years in the men's residence that are a concern.
I see. Well, I think that when it gets to time, I'd be happy to collaborate with the Y and see if we can find a good solution for it. Also about the new entry, I like the fact that is not competing with the period or style of the building. It's a current type of addition with the materials and all that. So because it's all mostly glass and with the limestone base, I think that will be a good addition to the building in that compete with the rest of the building. The other thing I think is positive about it, it's providing a dignified entry to the residents there rather than being somewhere else, like in the rear of the building. I think this is like facing the street, and it's compared to the scale of the building, it's a very small addition to it. And it's also removable, which is something that the Secretary of Interior's standards talks about. I think that the only thing I have to clarify from you is that since the roof is shed towards the building, I just want to make sure that there's no ice or water that will be hitting the actual building once it's reached to the flat point. I assume there's going to be some proper drainage or some sort of a heating system there so that the ice or the water don't hit the stone that is on the front facade of that
Agreed.
section. Of the
we will be working to avoid that.
Other than that, we would like to encourage you and the Y to consider the landmark designation, primarily because it will be a way to protect the building. And as you recall, we only review the exterior, we don't review the interior. So it would be just to maintain the integrity of the building, as you mentioned earlier. At the minimum, I strongly recommend that you apply for the National Register, which will actually give some significance or prominence to the building without necessarily the local review. But if I had my ruthers, I would like to see this building a landmark in the future. And I'd be happy to collaborate with you guys to see how that happens. And otherwise, I don't see any other issues with it.
You know, the great irony here, Carlos, is all the time I was a commissioner, I thought it was a landmark. But having said that, I shouldn't admit that, although it's many years in the past now.
Yeah.
I think the Y would like to understand the current ordinance better. It's been so many years since I was familiar with the ordinance that I don't know what the provisions are now and what they aren't and whether they've changed over time. I think it's something to look at down the road.
Okay, well, that sounds promising. So, you know, I'll be available to you or the Y if you want to explore more about that. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, any other comments or questions from staff? If anyone would like to provide public comment, either raise your hand or send me a message in the chat and I'll call on you once staff has finished their questions.
Johanna, I don't have any questions. This is Angel with Building Inspection Services and Property Standards. But having inspected this building and the residences and the common areas numerous times over the years, I, for one, am excited to see the improvements to the Y and the residences for the gentlemen that live here.
Okay, thanks, Angel. All right, seeing no other comments, then no, but oh wait, I take that back. Okay. Okay, anybody else want to speak? Otherwise, if there's a motion.
I'll make a motion for a positive recommendation to the Land Use Commission.
Second.
Okay, Katie, please call the roll.
Nyden,
Aye.
Griffith,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Schnur,
Aye.
Kano,
Aye.
Biggs,
Aye.
Tristan,
Aye.
Papa,
Aye.
Eckersberg,
Aye.
Hink,
Aye.
and Pratt.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, Team YMCA. And this item's at the Land Use Commission next week on on the 9th at 7 p.m. and that is a virtual meeting. So that can be found on the city's website.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next up, 1706 to 10 Sherman Avenue. Stephen Rogan, the Varsity LLC, and Christillian Campbell Coyle request a major variation from the Evanston zoning ordinance to allow 2 on-site parking stalls where 26 are required for the addition of 35 upper floor apartments within the existing 4-story building formerly known as the Varsity Theater. In the D2 downtown retail core district, the co-applicants also propose to maintain 9,850 square feet about of ground floor commercial space within the existing building. No changes to building height or footprint are proposed. The Land Use Commission makes the recommendation to City Council, the determining body for this case. So I see Chris, and is it you or anybody else?
Steven's here.
Oh, hey, Stephen.
Yes,
Okay,
Stephen and Greg Randall from GREC is also joining us.
great. Okay.
And I saw Zach on earlier as well from GREC.
Chair Nyden, the applicant actually sent me some slides that I have pulled up and actually ready to go for this.
Sounds
if you
good.
let me pull those up. Okay. Everybody can see.
Great. Thank
Okay.
you.
Mhm.
And we'll just run through these quickly and then can turn it back over to the chair to facilitate questions. As I mentioned earlier, maybe we slide 2. I'll just introduce there we go. Team members, Stephen Rogan from the Benami Group. I'm Chris Dillian from Campbell Coyle. Also participating in the development is Development Management Associates, DMA. And then Greg Randall and Zach Morrison from GREC Architects are joining us as well. And lastly, JLL is supporting us on the retail leasing. Next slide. Just a little bit of context on the work that we do to familiarize the members of DAPR. We focus on transit-connected mixed use and multifamily projects, predominantly in the Chicago area. We're also working on the 1101 Church project, the former Sojourner Church in Evanston right now. So excited to continue our work in the city and collaborate with you all. Next slide. Another portion or subset of our work has been in adaptive reuse. This is a synagogue conversion that we completed in the Logan Square neighborhood of Chicago, also multifamily. So we have a track record working with historic buildings, and that's initially what connected myself and Stephen, the longtime owner of the Varsity Theater, and we're really excited about the opportunity to celebrate the existing building, deliver something that's contextual, and also sensitive to the existing improvements. Next slide. Just highlight a little bit about how we connected with GREC. So Greg and I collaborated previously. This is the Sophie Hotel, which is a boutique non-flagged hotel in the Hyde Park neighborhood of Chicago, where we've done a lot of work. So this is a stone's throw away from the university, and also sort of anchors the 53rd Street corridor, which is the primary commercial corridor in Hyde Park. And so we collaborated on this. Once again, this was new construction, but very much contextual for the neighborhood, something that we really sought to focus on. And as we evaluated design teams for the Varsity Theater, especially given GREC's work with historic buildings and adaptive reuse, they were a natural fit. Greg, I'll let you introduce the next couple slides yourself.
Maybe muted.
Yeah, well, he's connecting. I'll just introduce. So one of the things that's inspired us about GREC is some of their adaptive reuse work, in particular in the hospitality space. So this is the Hoxton Hotel in Los Angeles. They also did the Hoxton, which is a new construction project in Chicago. And then the next slide is one of my favorites. It's a fantastic adaptive reuse, the Ace Hotel in Los Angeles. And so I think in particular their work in the hospitality space has really inspired us and is something that we're excited to kind of leverage that as we think about the Varsity Theater. Greg, anything to add? I still can't hear Greg, so we'll let Greg try to figure that out and we'll keep going. So as we think about the Varsity Theater, there's sort of two experiences that we are envisioning. The upper level component will be multifamily. And then of course, on the ground floor, there's the retail component. And thank you. And so to the north is Bookman's Alley, obviously a beloved space in the city of Evanston. And so the ground floor experience will not only be oriented to Sherman Avenue, but we're also pursuing a strategy of really embracing the alley and celebrating that space. We think there's an incredible placemaking opportunity along Bookman's Alley to create a destination or really reinforce a destination for downtown Evanston. Next slide. Here's a context plan. Again, just kind of the location really right at the core of the downtown area, as well as an existing conditions site plan. I'm sorry, not an existing condition site plan, the proposed site plan. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but we're incorporating several parking spaces and obviously loading on site. Next slide. This gives you a sense just on existing conditions today. These photos are relatively recent, so it gives you a sense on the character of the front facade. So that's the east facade of the building. You can also see some of the inconsistencies in the ground floor retail in particular, and some of the modifications that have been made over the decades. Next slide. And here's a shot of existing conditions along Bookman's Alley. So you can see some of the utility poles, the paved surface, as well as in general, the condition of the north facade of the building. Next slide. So in terms of the retail component, we're envisioning a project that's going to incorporate approximately 10,000 square feet of urban storefront retail. So this will basically encompass the majority of the ground floor of the Varsity Theater, much as it exists today, though we will be incorporating new circulation for the residential multifamily component above. As I mentioned earlier, Bookman's Alley will be oriented both to Sherman Avenue as well as the alley. And we see that as an opportunity to create a fantastic new destination, really reinforcing Bookman's Alley as a great place for downtown Evanston for residents and visitors. Next slide. So here is a ground floor plan. You can actually go to the next slide. It'll show just a sort of a suggestive demising plan. So you can get the sense of how this might be demised. We're advancing initial conversations with retailers and restaurants, and those will accelerate as we have a more definitive construction timeline. But again, you can see that some of the retail will really hold that Sherman Avenue frontage, while other spaces will orient to Bookman's Alley. I'll also highlight the doors along the alley. We'll talk about some inspiration imagery and what that might potentially look like. You'll also see to the south the corridor for the residential lobby. One other thing that I'll highlight, you'll in particular notice the location and placement of bike storage. So that would be immediately accessible in the lobby. We're really looking at elevating that. We've got some precedent imagery that we will share later in the deck, but really trying to accentuate that space and really make it connected with the residential experience. Next slide. This is an earlier rendering of the Bookman's Alley experience. So some things to highlight here. This is preliminary. The space hasn't been formally designed, but our vision is to incorporate lighting, public art, maybe an enhanced, or certainly I should say an enhanced surface to the alley itself, really to create something special that celebrates this space and it reinforces it as a destination for downtown. Next slide. This is just sort of a transition slide so we can jump to the next one as we think about that space, that volume of space above the ground floor experience. Next slide. We're envisioning 35 apartments. They're going to include studios, 1 beds, 2 beds, and 3 beds. I've got the distribution of the unit mix below, but in general, given the dimensions of the building, I would say on average these unit sizes for each bed count trend a little bit larger than what has been delivered in the market from a new construction standpoint. And we are incorporating 3 on-site affordable units, and in discussions with several folks at the city have committed to 2 1-bed affordable units and 1 2-bed affordable unit. We're also incorporating work from home functionality. That is something that with some of that extra square footage that we're inheriting because we're utilizing the existing building, we're going to be able to create some opportunities to really emphasize that functionality. Next slide. Just a quick summary, a floor plan of the 2nd floor, and then next slide will be the 3rd and 4th floor, which are replicated. Next slide.
Am I here now, Chris?
Yeah.
Oh,
welcome.
Very, very sorry.
Perfect timing to introduce.
So sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've
Greg,
burned out a few sets of earbuds. So yes, thanks. And I do apologize again to everybody for the time. So the idea here is to, as Chris mentioned, to redevelop the existing theater within the existing volume of the building into ground floor retail, experiential retail that we envision really energizing Bookman's Alley, as well as the street frontage on Sherman. And then you can see in the upper levels of the buildings, the 2 through 4 levels would be residential units that would have very large windows and openings that can spill on to Bookman's Alley as well. We're proposing a very flush sort of Juliet balcony so as to maintain the property line with our development within the property line as well. We'll get some mood imagery in a little bit about what we see materiality-wise, but we're definitely looking to be very, very respectful of the existing architecture and the facades along Sherman, as well as maintaining as much of that as possible and maintaining that character. And then anything that we do with contemporary improvements that are exposed to view would be things that would probably have been developed sort of in that era. It's just kind of this was done in 1924, 26, kind of the roaring 20s, a little bit past the industrial age. So the use of wrought steel, things like that, was really starting to come in and sort of the industrial revolution in the US. So what you're seeing is a bunch of new openings that'll provide a fair amount of light and air into these new residential units on this floor. Next slide, please. So here's a view from Sherman, Bookman's Alley on the right. Obviously, the intent for that alley is to really energize that with a bunch of retail, great kinds of uses that would really activate that space daytime and nighttime, keeping that entire for the majority of the ground floor as a retail experience, whether that's multi-tenants that are curated, local shops, food and beverage, outdoor dining, things like that, that would really, really activate this and create a great intersection to Sherman at the front of the building. We will be most likely replacing the windows in the building as they're single pane and not very energy efficient as it relates to the front facade, but the intent is to have the design of those new energy efficient openings, window units match the architectural design of the existing as much as possible. The ground floor retail, as you may or may not know, was the original theater marquee. So it was a very large expanse, and at some point it was broken down to smaller openings. So we'd like to clean that up a little bit, put in period sensitive but contemporary entries to those retail storefronts as well. Next slide, please. And again, as we mentioned, materiality on the left, you can see the existing windows. We'd like to recreate something very similar to that. We will most definitely, through our historical experience, be respectful of a lot of the terracotta detailing on the building, the the green shake roof. The sides of the building, which is the third slide from the third image from the left, is pretty much existing Chicago common brick that's been tuck pointed rather heavily over the years. We intend just to clean that up, patch up some of the existing openings that are no longer relevant, and create new large openings for those doors and windows that you saw. And the materiality for those doors and windows would be something that is either wrought steel or steel-like, reflecting and kind of respecting the era that this building was developed, with some metal trim and things like that, being definitely taking a back seat to the existing architecture. Next slide. So some of the mood imagery and things that we envision, if you folks are familiar with the Dairy Block or the alleys in downtown Detroit that have been revitalized. But the key here is really to make that a very energetic place to be. Very popular. We envision probably an art program of some sort, certainly a lot of festive lighting to really draw you in and draw you to those shops. They've been extremely successful in Detroit. Behind Shinola, for example, and Bedrock has done an amazing job in sort of redeveloping this part of Detroit, and we envision this alley having that same vibe. We can scroll through some more mood imagery here. Some of the storefronts, again, as I mentioned, we're being very respectful to the existing architecture. We want to use materials that represent but don't mimic the era that this building was built. On the interior of the building, for the residential entry, we envision a very efficient residential lobby with a kind of a showcased bike room at the front. We think that's a very, very important aspect of a lot of the work we do, is to celebrate that rather than putting all the bikes in storage in a back dusty storage room somewhere. We're going to find a way to celebrate that. In our plan, as you might have seen on the ground floor plan, it's front and center, along with mail and package and things like that. So we believe in that. We believe we're going to have a very strong pedestrian friendly, bikeable, as well as pet friendly facility and residential building here. And then I think the last slide, or the next slide, is just indicative of sort of the architectural style that we're going for. We do have this opportunity to be a little bit lofted, if you will. Chris, if you want to speak to this happens to be one of your projects, but this is a very clean, sensible style with large expanses of windows with some exposed brick around the exterior of the building, and really let these residents personalize it to their way of living.
Yeah, this is from the adaptive reuse of the project, the synagogue in Logan Square. So these are precedent images from a project that we delivered. We're considering the same interior designer for this project, and really we'll look to also take cues from the building itself and some of maybe the color palette as an example, and find ways to incorporate those in the interiors as well. Next slide. So in summary, in terms of the variation request, there are 26 parking spaces required. We are incorporating 2 parking spaces, including 1 ADA space on site. Our hope and belief is that we may be able to expand upon that and accommodate additional spaces on site, but right now we're being conservative given where we are in the design process. And then we've had dialogue with city staff on leasing off-site parking spaces. We have had additional dialogue and correspondence with the parking division regarding the parking facility on Sherman. And we know that there's some availability there, as well as potentially other locations in the downtown area. So our intention is to lease off-site spaces. And in our most recent dialogue with city staff, we had discussed 11 spaces off-site. Next slide. And just a summary before we wrap up in terms of public impact. One, obviously, we're working very hard to deliver a contextual project, one that stays within the bounds of the existing building. We anticipate a significant increase in the real estate tax base because of this project. A large percentage of that of the existing building has effectively been mothballed for decades. We are incorporating on-site affordable housing, in this case 3 units, into the project. And then most importantly, reimagining Bookman's Alley. We think that that has tremendous potential to really become a celebrated, or become and sort of reaffirm that space as a celebrated space in downtown Evanston. So Stephen, anything to add as we wrap up? Stephen, you're on mute.
I like to say I bring the black and white and you guys add the color. So at this point, let's go on to questions.
All right, we started with Public Works last time, so let's see if the planners have any comments this time.
I'll defer to Carlos and Mike first.
All right, Carlos, why don't you start us off?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I'm very excited about the prospects of this building being a recognized structure in the downtown. You mentioned that you had other projects that were adapted to reuse and historic buildings. Were any of those buildings landmark buildings themselves?
We are working on one landmark project right now.
And have you considered landmarking this building as you do in all the rehabilitation restoration as well?
Carlos, the answer, and I'll jump in on this one. Have we considered it and evaluated or researched it? Absolutely. We have had discussions with many people, and what we are trying to do, we have not, frankly, found it to be a viable option that provides additional benefits to the project itself. So what we tried to do is to basically remain true to the structure, remain true to the integrity of the building, and address it as if it was exactly what it is, a valued asset within, a valued structure within the city and the community. So that's really, after many conversations with many people, this is kind of the approach that we've pursued.
Thank you. But I was asking Christopher if he had a building, and he said yes. What is his experience with that building, if anything?
I guess just to clarify, so we recently acquired a property that is a National Historic Landmark. So we are in the early stages of developing a property or redeveloping adaptive reuse. But I would say beyond that, it is a fairly new process for us.
That being said, I think that it doesn't hurt to continue exploring that, and I will encourage you to do that with the Varsity Theater. I think there's some potential benefits without necessarily stopping you from what you wanted to do, just to get a little bit more punch to the project. I think that among of the public benefits would be that it might be either a local landmark or in the National Register of Historic Places, where as long as you're not using federal funding, you can basically do a lot of the work that you're doing interior wise. You know, it's not going to be a theater again, but definitely could continue being a landmark or a building that has certain recognition in the downtown. So I'm glad that you're doing all the maintenance on the north elevation. And also, I think that the new openings, the windows and doors are not exaggerated. I think they're appropriate and to scale. I would encourage you to explore a little bit more of the front elevation when you have the storefront where you're trying to bring some of the transparency of the original theater. I appreciate that, but maybe the top band maybe is a little bit too heavy. But again, it's just an observation for you to kind of encourage you to continue doing the best you can for the building. And also, I would not discount, you know, the possibility of restoring the windows rather than replacing the windows, or at least consider restore the structure of the windows and maybe do a different type of glazing, so that would be more energy efficient as well. So the more you retain of the integrity of the building, I think the better off it will be for what it is. You know, the more you take away, it's less of what the original is. So I will encourage you just to explore that. I think that's some potential there. And I will definitely be very much in support of anything you can do to maintain the integrity of the building.
Thank you. Yeah, for the wood windows in particular, we have talked about a potential option of trying to look at maybe a storm behind them to allow them to remain. So we are receptive and we are actively talking about the options right now.
Right, there are interior storms, and obviously you can change the glazing to be more energy efficient. If the windows are in good shape, but they don't look great right now, and probably they're not efficient, but it's not enough necessarily to decide that it's beyond repair or should not be restored. I think that would be the responsible thing to do. And I think you're trying to get to that point.
When you say the top band, are you referring to the sign band above the?
Yeah, it's kind of if you go back to the front elevation, Katie.
Yeah, I think just as you're going to that slide, something important to remember is the entire ground floor of the building, the original building, was completely different. It was all a marquee, almost all the way across, and at some point, which was appropriate at that time, and that was really part of the historic flavor of the building. We certainly looked into that as we were very sensitive to the adapting and reusing, making sure that we can restore to the original design level.
Right.
We've done wood window replacements, and we've done metal windows that look like that. We definitely want to consider we would certainly look into that. And, the coloration for sure, and make sure that the energy efficiency is there as well.
Yeah, also another thing that is not here, but signage will be also significant if you're going to have storefronts. And how would that be determined? Maybe a unified sign program will help to make it more of a statement rather than each one having their own. And I think you can obviously have a very nice storefront with the signage that is also programmed. And the last question I have, I'm sorry.
We'll have a sign program developed. We're very, some of this will be driven by the retailers and the tenants or the restaurants in terms of more so on the alley. But that said, we're very committed to making sure nobody gets free rein. Okay. This is something that we will really monitor and happy to have discussions to make sure, but nobody will have free rein on anything as far as signage and or storefronts, especially on Sherman.
So I want to jump in and just mention that signage is a separate permit, and we have about 45 minutes left of the meeting, and we still have another item, and I'm sure other staff. So Carlos, anything else you want to add? I think
yes, the last thing I want to,
you have concerns about
I'm sorry. Last thing I want to just mention, any exterior or interior terracotta that will be removed could maybe do some rescuing of that and maybe utilizing some interior spaces or vice versa, so that you keep some of the original material in the building rather than somewhere else. I will encourage you to do that.
That's our intent.
All right. Other planner comments?
I'll go ahead and speak, Chair Nyden. I just wanted to clarify for those in the public that the elevations themselves do come before DAPR again with the building permit. So while this is certainly beneficial for the applicant to be aware of now, these can be fleshed out at building permit. The request that DAPR is reviewing is to recommend approval with conditions or denial on the parking variation for 26 stalls where to allow 2 stalls on site where 26 parking stalls are required. The applicant did mention leasing stalls off site. I think after my discussions with the applicants and then also with my colleague Jessica Heinck and other planning staff, we would like to get some feedback from DAPR on what the number of stalls the applicant should be leasing off-site in the recommendation to the Land Use Commission and the City Council. I know that there's been some precedent with usually about a half stall per dwelling unit, but then there's also half of the stalls that are required. So I think that the applicant would like some direction on that, and then we'll need a condition of approval for that in the motion eventually. So that's all I wanted to know. If anybody has questions on how we got to that number, I'm happy to elaborate, but that's hopefully what we can come to.
Thanks, Katie. I mean, I think the precedent for providing parking and then asking that it be removed is pretty well established in Evanston. We put the parking in and then we work to remove it if necessary. And we appreciate the securing of other spaces and not creating new spaces for the project too. I think that's a big piece because adding more parking to this particular site would not, in my mind, would not be a good idea. That's an alley that gets used by a lot of different uses. Adding more, I don't think anyone would be suggesting to add more parking to the actual site. So that I would echo Katie's comments, and I don't know if anyone else has any other comments about the parking, but I think trying to obtain the required parking off-site would be ideal. And then you can come back at a later date after the building's stabilized to indicate that they're not being used and remove that requirement.
I agree with both Director Nyden and Katie regarding the parking. I know the site is in a TOD and it's very close to public transportation and the main station for the downtown area, but we do have a precedent, even though we have several projects who have mentioned that they're not using much of their parking. We do have a precedent set for the developments to lease spaces off-site. And then however long after the building is leased up for them to provide some kind of study or show how much parking is or is not being used. And we have been able to negotiate for several different developments to lower the amount of parking that is required. So that is something that can be pursued. And typically we start from what the requirement is and then kind of work backwards from there.
All right, any other comments from staff on that?
I can just say that as staff, we discussed with the applicant leasing 11 to 16 parking stalls, 16 being half of what, I think that's the half dwell, I have to check my math on that, but it's like half with what's required. So they have their 2 on site. And then the 11 was like the lower level. So if there's a number that we can come to some sort of agreement with the applicant on, I don't know if anyone else on staff has any particular number in mind, what they would like to settle on. They're not necessarily proposing it. They're looking to us to kind of make that determination, and they'll proceed accordingly to the Land Use Commission.
I would think the applicant needs to provide that data. I think they should provide a study indicating how much parking they actually need. that shouldn't be on us.
We can respond to what they've, I mean, I think that we sort of need to pick a spot to the happy medium there. So, so applicant, how many parking spaces are you prepared and able to provide offsite?
Bottom line, we'd like to go with as few as possible. We feel as though this project, between the transportation, the target is, look, we have no idea who's going to live here and who's not going to live here. My sense is, history shows that a lot of people who live in Evanston work in Evanston. Families is a different story, but we think the target market for this are young professionals and couples, young couples, before making the move to a home. There's a high probability a lot of these people are going to live in Evanston or take the transportation. And so, you know, we'd like to go with 11.
All right, so thank you for the 11. I feel like I'm doing prices right here, and I'll go to the next group.
Look, let me add one other thing, because it's always a tricky issue. I know it's both a difficult situation for the community and for staff, and we don't want to create an aggravation for anybody. You know, we feel like 11 would be a great starting point. We're happy to stipulate that beyond that, our tenants have to park in the city garage if there's a need beyond the 11. But we feel pretty comfortable with that 11 based upon that's where we're at in the location.
11 total, including what you have on site, or 11 in addition to what you have on site?
Whatever is going to be most amenable to the project itself from your standpoint.
Yeah, the figure we were sharing earlier would have been in addition to the 2 on site, and so it'd be a total of 13.
If they were to provide the typical half parking stall per dwelling unit, that would be 18 parking stalls total, with 2 on site and 16 in the garage. If they were to, and then the lower end of that range would be if they've just provided half of what is required, which is 26, that would be 13 with 2 on site and 11 in the garage. So the applicant, I think they'd prefer to go with the lower range, but as precedent, the city has typically wanted a minimum of 0.5 stalls per dwelling unit.
All right, thank you. I want to just touch on any other issues about the site before we make a motion.
Johanna, I have just a question in regards to waste pickup behind 1716 and 1718 Sherman. If they can just touch on how this new improvements and specifically use, how it would affect trash pickup behind there.
Sure. Currently, I believe there's 1 dumpster back there and maybe 2 95-gallon. I think I don't have the exact count. The plan is to simply move those to the alley where the other tenants, Alley Gallery and Bookends and Beginning, have their dumpsters, which line the north-south alley. I happened to stop the group driver one day on the north-south route, and they would have no problem. It's actually a separate route right now where they have to send somebody down that alley just to pick up that dumpster and or recycling bins. I'm not sure if they're recycling or waste containers, roll-offs. So that's the game plan there.
So, I mean, look, I'm looking at MapQuest right now. I'm seeing a couple of dumpsters. Again, you probably have better information than I do on what it looks like currently. but who will actually be moving it from behind these buildings to the north, south leg of the alley?
I will. I mean, we will. It gets into a tricky point. I don't have control of the north side of the alley. It's a ground lease. There's a lessor that has a master lease for the property, which doesn't expire for a few more months. So for me to address that, I need to put that disclaimer out there that I can tell you what I'll do when I get control of the property, which will be in a couple of months. And that is, we'll just relocate those to the alleyway.
Okay.
The landlord will.
So
I mean,
can I piggyback on that question too, Edgar?
Sure.
Go ahead.
So we anticipate the residents and the retail groups to use the same dumpster, correct?
No, these are two separate properties. The discussion, that the question that was just asked regarding the building on the north side of the alley, the residences that are being installed or being created within the Varsity Theater will have their own interior garbage. It'll be in the west, let's see, that southwest corner there within the existing structure on the ground floor.
So there'll be two collection points, is what you're saying.
There currently are. They're currently 3 collection points. One for the gangway behind the north side of the building, the north property on the property on the north side of Bookman's Alley. There's one collection point for the gangway. There's one collection point for the north-south alley. And then there's one collection point for the former Varsity Theater. And that'll be reduced to 2 collection points, the north-south alley and the Varsity Theater.
And so you are moving all of those to the north-south, or one of them staying where they are?
Currently, the property to the north, and I'm not intimately familiar with the exact numbers, so I don't want to be quoted on this. But currently, it's my understanding that Alley Gallery and Bookends and Beginnings have their dumpsters on the north-south alley. It's my understanding and recollection that there's at least one dumpster and maybe some 95-gallon roll-offs that are in the gangway between the 3-story front building and the U-shaped Bookman's Alley, Bookends and Beginning and Alley Gallery structure. Those will be moved to the north-south alley to join the other dumpsters from that property.
Okay, so the residents who are in the units inside your property will have their own internal way of disposing of the trash. And who will be taking that material outside to the collection point?
Look, I don't know the idiocy.
If I could
go on.
Yeah, if I could just interject briefly, we would have third-party management that would be facilitating that, and presumably the waste hauling service. We would have an arrangement. We typically have private waste hauling, and we make arrangements with the waste hauler to access, in this case, the building services area and the loading area, and pulling that out into the proposed loading area.
But the collection would be from our franchise hauler, correct?
I'm sorry?
But the actual collection of the waste would be from our franchise hauler.
Correct.
I understand that to be a requirement, yes.
Yes, all right.
Okay, I just advocate for that you're adding a bunch of residential units, so the need for maybe a potential increase in frequency or size of containers might be needed, because the amount of waste that's coming out of residence generated area tends to be a bit more than potentially commercial on a per person unit. So just something to be mindful of when you're considering the size and service frequency. Do you also anticipate offering recycling collection for your residents?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
And absolutely noted on the frequency. We're happy to look into that. We obviously want we want to convey, first-class operation and residential experience, as well as the retail level along the alley. So that's going to be essential to the operations of the building.
All right, any other comments, keeping from staff, and then I want to take some public comment that I've gotten queued up here.
Yeah, how much are we supposed to comment on the Bookman Alley proposal? It's the first time I've heard about this. Is this a done deal, or what? How does the city stand on that right now? What is our stance?
Well, this is a good question. So this is for the major variation for the zoning ordinance. So perhaps we can have a separate conversation about the Bookman's Alley. There is an easement that was done I think I've lost track of time in COVID years, Stephen, but what was it, 2 years ago?
No. It was just finalized about 3 months ago. It's been talked about for 14 years, but it was just finalized.
Like 2 years ago, though. There's something that went a couple years ago. Anyway, and it's in the downtown plan from like a long time ago.
Yeah, that was 20 years ago.
Yeah, I would look for that because I worked on that. Okay, so yes, Ingrid, good comment. I'm sure the applicant would be happy to discuss and chat about this at a later date for further coordination on that. But anything else about parking or the way that the building would operate in terms of that sort of aspects of the or garbage or site or rear of the building from staff before I take public comment?
Can I just ask, how does the southern units get any sun?
We're hoping to have, we're not hoping, we're planning on large windows. The way the apartments are laid out, it is what it is, unfortunately, in that the dynamics are, it's
an urban condition.
Structure. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
There is
I
a fairly
keep going here because
setback.
and just an announcement. I have asked staff to contact if the third applicant's on here. I am going to lose staff shortly. We do have a snowstorm coming, and there's staff that are needing to leave to prepare for that and do some other things. So I've asked staff to contact for that item. So we'll finish this item and then adjourn the meeting because I will lose quorum very shortly. So, but I want to take public, we're still in this item. I want to take public comment. Mr. Shahadi, I see that you have your hand up.
Good afternoon. My name is Ibrahim. I'm the owner of the commercial to the south and to the west. Okay, I have few concerns. My first question will be to the fire department. Can you tell me how, if in case of a fire in the Galleria, how do you access the apartments? Do you know?
Are we talking about the proposed occupancy?
Yes, because as far as I know, there are no stairs to the apartments, in the 52 apartments in the Galleria. So the way it's set, the Knox key is set in the back door. So if the alley is vacated, it's going to create lots of problem, I think, for the fire department to access these additional 35 units and the existing 52 units. And of course, I'm going to talk also about the congestion for the garbage delivery, etc. But I like the first question to let us know how, in case of fire, if that alley is vacated and you're having a big fire, how are you going to access these 52 apartments, knowing there is no stairs in the front of the building? You can't access from Church Street.
Okay, I cannot answer the question to the existing apartments. I will tell you for this proposed change of use occupancy by city ordinance, this building will be required to have fully sprinklered and alarm system.
So this building upgrade, fire protection will definitely help in a fire situation.
I
As far as-
understand, but
Yeah.
I'm talking about how do you going to access if the alley is vacated? How do you going to access if there is a fire in those 52 apartments, knowing this alley is going to be vacated? And there will be some delivery trucks, some garbage trucks, some moving trucks, and you're proposing 3 parking spaces, which is impossible to have if you have all those things, the delivery, the garbage, the moving, etc. And knowing you cannot access from Church Street if there is a fire in those 52 apartments and possibly in the back of those 35 proposed apartments. My concern is vacating the alley is going to create a disaster.
So
How
my
you
understanding.
answer? How are you going to access if there's a fire? How are you going to access those apartments?
My
So,
understanding.
okay, well, I'm just gonna jump in here. We're a little off topic. Mr. Shahadi, I think your concerns are completely understandable and staff wants to get you the answers. But the thing right now is that we don't have the plans that they're proposing for the alley. So we can't, so Mr. Tristan or our city engineers, we can't give you the answers. And I know you are at the building adjacent, and I can see why this would certainly be a serious concern for you. So how about if you provide me your contact information in the chat, I can have staff reach out and we can, all work together, because I completely understand you're an immediate neighbor and this is a great concern for you.
Sure, I just want us to not just go approve things. That alley been vacated, it's like at night time. We never even knew it has been vacated. I don't have a problem with the 35 apartments. I have a problem with, in case of a disaster, a fire, plus, and that area has to be open from the east to the west, okay? You're vacating an alley to add a few stores. We have plenty of vacant stores in Evanston. We might as well fill those before we create a problem. Those 52 apartments, it was understood that the fire trucks are going to come from the back.
Mr. Shahadi, I can see right now from the easement agreement, I just pulled it up, and then we're gonna move on, because I really am gonna lose staff, but I don't want to lose, I don't want you to misunderstand that we're concerned about this. The easement agreement does address that this does preserve the city's right for fire, police, and first responders in any emergency situation. So this team cannot.
If there are people sitting in that alley, you're going to chase
All right, Mr.
them away.
Shahadi, I'm trying to answer your question. Just please let me finish. There's an easement. We don't have proposed plans right now. So if you could just give me your contact information, I will make sure, I will reach out to you, and I'll make sure everybody else is connected to you, because we completely understand your adjacency to the building. And I'm sure as good neighbors, Mr. Dillian and Mr. Rogan wouldn't want you to feel cut off from anything as well. So absolutely. And then if I see you put your name, but I just need an email or a phone number too, please. Okay. All right, Mr. Poulios.
Hi, I'm Mike Polis. Hi, I'm Michael Polis. My office has been here on this block for 41 years. 4 quick points. 1, I think Bookman's Alley is apostrophe S. This is a typographical issue. 2, I'd sure like to see maybe a little more attention given to the front facade. What's there right now on the first floor, I know it's functional, but I've never really much cared for it. Something more consistent with the old theater might be nice. Maybe even one of the windows could still be like a ticket booth type thing, which might go well with a store, but would also give some historical context to the building. Number 3 is my biggest concern. We already have problems with access to the alley and to the parking lot behind Crossroads, where I have 4 spaces. I'm hoping that the city can address the question of truck deliveries and so on, so that access to that parking lot does not get blocked. Right now, we have three ways to get into the alley, and very often at least 2 of them, sometimes 3 of them, are blocked by delivery trucks. So if we take away one of those accesses, it's going to make the situation worse. And finally, I do think you need to give some good thought to the trash collection issue. There are like 10 containers in the alley between Seville Flowers and the building I'm in at 1724 Sherman. It's really tight back there with the existing dumpsters as it is. And if we're now going to try to add more dumpsters to other areas, it's going to exacerbate the situation. I'm sure that problem can be solved, but it does need to be addressed. Those are my 4 points. And otherwise, I think you've got a really promising project here.
Thank you. Carl Klein.
Hi. So I just want to state for the public record that Resolution 49R21 authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement for a 25-year alley easement for this alley was passed in the consent agenda on 5/10/21, the last meeting of the 80th City Council. And this was the same night that the 81st City Council was sworn in. So I also agree with Mr. Shahadi and Mr. Poulos that making this alley a pedestrian alley, yes, while it would be great to have that environment, does raise concerns about public safety, fires, especially fire. Imagine a fire truck barreling through the alley with people sitting at a cafe in the alley. So the other thing is that I know we're discussing the parking for this variance to allow for a zoning amendment. The city engineer, Laura Biggs, went into great detail about paving and permeability and all that for the Y, but that wasn't discussed for the alley or the parking. And there was discussion of potentially changing the paving there. So that I wonder why that wasn't discussed. Also, I'm wondering who has sole responsibility for the maintenance of this whole T section of the alley. Is it now Mr. Rogan who has the easement, or is it the city because it's a public right of way? And finally, I agree with all of the preservation comments in the packet to maintain the existing front-facing primary facade, the roof, the store alterations to be as sensitive as possible, and also very important that there is a significant amount of interior architectural integrity at the second floor. Is any of this being retained? And if possible, it could be removed and reused somewhere else. And if removal is required, extensive photo documentation should be taking place. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Kelly, did you have any questions about this item?
Yeah, thank you. I do. Thank you. So as you all know, I care very deeply about this building. Love the varsity. So yeah, and I'm delighted that that the structural, at least the exterior structural integrity is going to be maintained. Of course, I would love to have seen it become a cultural hub downtown, but short of that, I'm very happy about that again, that the exterior will be saved. And I concur with Carlos Ruiz. I would love to see you retain as much as you can of the integrity, what the interior, as Mr. Klein just mentioned, as well as the exterior. I know there's pretty rails still, pretty wrought iron, or I don't know what they're, but anyway, some beautiful work inside also that could be retained. So as much as you can, and as a public benefit, I'd also like to ask you to please consider entertaining a little bit more the idea of landmarking it, making it a local landmark. I think this would mean a lot to Evanstonians. We care deeply about this. And I also do want to ask, I'm not real clear. I love the idea of celebrating Bookman's Alley, but I also love the idea of celebrating that Sherman block. I mean, that's one of our broadest blocks downtown, and it has probably the broadest sidewalk. So that orientation, the retail experience, I feel like so much of your emphasis is on the alley, which is really cool, and I love that. But I'd like to see and know that we're also talking about a real orientation outward, not just one little door, but really, really attracting people so that that sidewalk, that whole area is happening. Like that's a bustling happening, that sidewalk. That's not just about that alley. We really need to do that downtown. So I would love to see and know that we're going to have, I'd love to see small stores there, not just like some big formula store. I hope that, I guess you're contracting with JLL, I think. I don't know what kind of experience they have with small businesses, but that's really where everything's happening in Evanston, Central Street, Main, Dempster. It's where we have these unique small businesses. So that's what I'd love to see. And I'd love to know more. When I look at your design, it sort of looks like maybe there's one door at the end of the Sherman. And so I'd really like to ask you to really try to orient out so that we can really, when you drive downtown, you see something happening there. And I'd love to work also in conjunction more, with the owner of the Marshall Fields building and make that area with that broad sidewalk an event unto itself. And so I'm a little concerned that it feels like everything's just kind of going off into the alley and not enough is moving forward onto Sherman. And I think that would be my, that I'd like to talk to you more about that. So thank you. I think that's it for now.
Joanna, I know you're short on time. It'll take 30 seconds. One, Alderman Kelly. While we have had not many, we probably had a number of conversations with people on the Sherman Avenue space. This is not an embellishment. Every single one of them wants to utilize Sherman Avenue, that broad sidewalk, okay? So that's one. Two, we are looking at saving what we can. I don't mean save. We're looking at integrating interior pieces, and that's why Greg's on this call, and you just challenged him to figure out a way to work it into the project. So you're speaking to the right person in that, so.
Well, thank you. And again, like small, unique businesses, I mean, this building represents so much of downtown character and identity and history. And, I just, if we can really move towards making that, attracting people to that building.
And to Carl's point, I have reached out in the past 2 weeks to 2 different photographers to begin discussions with them to document it as well.
Right. But ideally it'll remain in the building. I think it's really, it all belongs as much as possible, belongs in that place. So I'm very excited about it. I look forward to working with you further. Thank you.
All right, I'm seeing no other public comment. Is there, and no other staff comments? Is there a motion?
So I will make a motion for a positive recommendation to the Land Use Commission contingent on the parking issue being addressed. I would recommend, based on staff comments, that they would include 16 parking spaces in the garage, including in addition to what's on site.
Second.
Okay, Katie, please call the roll.
Knighton,
Aye.
Griffith,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Schnur,
Aye.
Kano,
Aye.
Biggs,
Aye.
Tristan,
Aye.
Papa,
Aye.
Eckersberg,
Aye.
Heinck,
Aye.
and Pratt.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously.
Okay, great. So that, and I'm sorry, what that item is, what date is it at Land Use Commission?
That is going on February 23rd at 7 p.m. via Zoom to the Land Use Commission for public hearing. And the Land Use Commission does not make a final determination on parking variations. So this will be determined by the City Council.
Great, thank you. Okay, and then the next item, as I mentioned a little bit ago, is 2356 Colfax Terrace. We're going to need to make a motion to continue this item to the next meeting. I'm sorry, Mr. Hillman, we are going to.
Can I ask, when is the next meeting?
It's next Tuesday.
Okay, so we'll still be able to do our Land Use Commission meeting then on February 20th.
Can you stop sharing your screen?
Oh, yeah, apologies. There you go.
Okay, so, yeah, so it's next week. I've literally asked some staff here to stay a little bit longer because they need to leave. So they've been very kind to stay till this point. So we're gonna have to continue the item till next week. So is there a motion to continue the item? And you'll be the first item up there, so. And it might be the only item next week.
I'll make a motion to continue.
I'll second.
Sorry, Mr. Hillman, for squeezing you out. Sorry about that. It's never fun. I apologize.
All right, Katie, please call the roll.
Nyden,
Aye.
Griffith,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Schnur,
Aye.
Kano,
Aye.
Biggs,
Aye.
Tristan,
Aye.
Papa,
Aye.
Eckersberg,
Aye.
Heinck,
Aye.
and Pratt.
Aye.
All right, so the motion will be on first item on the agenda next week. We'll do a motion to adjourn, but before we adjourn, Edgar, why don't you give all these nice people the latest weather update? So, because I'm sure you've been watching the radar a couple times.
You think I have time to give a weather update? I gotta go talk to everybody. No, actually, right now, we just got an afternoon update. It's actually calling for a little bit less snow than my daytime update. So as of right now, they're thinking for Evanston from 12 a.m. Wednesday to 4 p.m. or 12 a.m. 4 p.m. Thursday, 4 to 4.75 inches. So that's actually gone down about 2 inches, which I'm very excited about. Hopefully it stays that way. So.
Okay. All right, well, maybe it'll be even less. Maybe it'll be wrong the other way. So, all right, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your day. Be safe.